Subject 9 has escaped containment. The words hung in the air of the laboratory like a toxic gas cloud. 5 pairs of eyes blinked nervously at me, their nictitating membranes fluttering in what I recognized as extreme anxiety. As chief xenobiologist for the Galactic Research Consortium, I'd seen this particular expression before, usually right before someone got fired or executed. "How?" I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. "How does a primitive mammal from a backwater planet escape a Level 7 containment facility?" Dr. Vronix, my supposedly brilliant head of security, shuffled his taloned feet. "We underestimated her problem-solving capabilities. Evidently," I hissed, "we kidnap thousands of specimens every solar cycle without incident. Yet somehow you let the most dangerous one escape." "With respect, Dr. Kilzol," Vronix continued, his cranial ridge flushing purple with embarrassment, "our initial assessment categorized humans as mid-tier intelligence at best. Their technology is laughably primitive, their social structures inefficient, their save the excuses." I slammed my appendage against the console, cracking its surface. "Subject 9 has demonstrated cognitive abilities far beyond our initial assessment. She's been categorized as threat level Omega for the past 30 rotations." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what Omega classification meant. Existential threat to our species. "Show me the escape footage," I ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a female human with copper-colored head fur pulled back tightly against her skull. For a fleeting moment, I found myself admiring the elegant efficiency of her movements as she pretended to be unconscious on her examination table. The facility's automated systems had been programmed to alert staff if vital signs indicated distress or death, but clearly not if they indicated perfect calm. "Is she meditating?" I asked incredulously. "Apparently," muttered Dr. Zal, our behavioral expert. "She's been doing it for weeks. We thought it was some primitive religious practice. Turns out she was timing the guard rotations." The footage showed the human, Alexandra Parker, according to her file, remaining perfectly still until precisely the moment when the guard patrol passed. Then, with a quickness that belied her species' reputation for clumsiness, she produced a small implement. "What is that?" I demanded. "A medical scalpel," Vronix admitted. She somehow stole it during her last examination. You allowed her access to cutting tools." I could feel my dorsal spines extending in rage. "Not intentionally. Dr. Plex swears it was secured in his lab coat pocket. She must have picked it while he was measuring her cranium," the footage continued. "Subject 9 used the scalpel with surgical precision to remove the monitoring device implanted beneath her skin. Then she applied pressure to stop the bleeding, using a strip torn from her examination gown." "Fascinating," murmured Dr. Zal. "She understood exactly where the implant was located and how to remove it without triggering the alarm." "That's not fascinating," I snarled. "That's terrifying." I watched as the human proceeded to defeat 3 additional security measures, including a biometric lock she had no business understanding, let alone bypassing. The final moments of footage showed her disappearing into a ventilation shaft that, according to our engineering specs, should have been too small for any creature larger than a maintenance drone. "She dislocated her own shoulder to fit through," explained Dr. Vronix, a note of reluctant admiration in his voice, "then popped it back in once she was through. Voluntary anatomical manipulation." "Where is she now?" I asked, dreading the answer. "We don't know," admitted Vronix. "She disabled the tracking systems in that section, but logic suggests she's heading for the hangar bay." Of course she was. The logical escape route. And if she reached it, lock down the entire facility, I barked. "Emergency protocol zenith. No one in or out. Activate all combat drones. I want her found." "Sir," ventured Dr. Plex hesitantly, "perhaps we should consider negotiation? Subject 9 has demonstrated remarkable negotiation." I laughed, a harsh sound that made my subordinates flinch. "With a specimen. May I remind you, Doctor, that humans are classified as research subjects, not sentient peers. Their planet is scheduled for resource extraction within the next 5 cycles. The only reason we have been studying them is to determine if they possess any useful genetic material before their extinction." No one argued with me. They couldn't. The consortium's directives were clear. Primitive species occupied primitive worlds, and primitive worlds with valuable resources belonged to advanced species. That was the natural order of the universe. Find her, I said, my voice deadly quiet, or I will personally ensure all of you are reassigned to waste management on the methane mines of Dogravax Prime. They scattered like prey animals, leaving me alone with the frozen image of Subject 9 on the screen. I studied her features, noting the determined set of her jaw, the calculating intelligence in her eyes. You are clever for a primitive, I whispered to the image, but you are still just an animal. I couldn't have been more wrong. The first explosion rocked the facility exactly 27 minutes later. The second and third followed in rapid succession. Status report, I shouted into my communicator as emergency lights bathed my office in crimson. She's blown the primary power couplings. Vronix's voice was nearly drowned out by alarm klaxons. We are on emergency power only. How? How did she? The maintenance protocols. She accessed a terminal and initiated the overload sequence using Dr. Zal's credentials. I felt a cold dread settling in my stomach sacs. That's impossible. She couldn't know his access codes. She watched him enter them 3 days ago during a routine examination. Apparently, she has eidetic memory. We didn't know because we never tested for it. The implications were staggering. If she could memorize complex sequences after a single viewing, lock down all terminals, revoke all access credentials. Already done, but it's too late. She's created chaos. Half the containment cells have been opened. What? Which specimens? The non-sentients mostly. Apparently, she targeted the predator species enclosures specifically. Brilliant. Create a diversion using our own specimens against us. Casualties? I asked. 12 staff members confirmed dead, 37 injured. We have lost contact with sections 7 through 12. This wasn't an escape anymore. This was a systematic attack. Where is she heading? Based on the pattern of destruction, the Weapons Research Division. My blood turned to ice. If she reached our experimental weapons, deploy the hunter units. Authorization Castle Prime Omega 3. There was a pause on the other end. Sir, are you certain? The hunters aren't fully tested. They may not distinguish between. I don't care if they kill half our staff. Stop her at all costs. I severed the connection and activated my terminal, pulling up the facility schematics. The fastest route from the power couplings to the weapons division would take her through the main atrium. If I could cut her off there, I grabbed my sidearm and headed for the door. This human had made a fatal mistake. She'd made this personal. Pandemonium greeted me when I reached the main atrium. Emergency containment barriers had deployed randomly, creating a maze of transparent walls that disoriented staff and escaped specimens alike. Through the chaos, I spotted 3 of my security team attempting to corner what appeared to be an escaped Vorashian cave lion, a particularly nasty predator we'd collected for venom studies, but no sign of Subject 9. Where is she? I demanded, grabbing a passing technician. Who? The technician's eyes were wide with panic. The human female. Subject 9. I don't know. Everything's chaos. The systems are going haywire. The predator specimens are loose, and now the hunter units are attacking anything that moves. I shoved the useless technician aside and activated my communicator again. Vronix, give me her location. No response. Vronix, report. Nothing but static. Fine, I'd find her myself. I'd studied humans extensively. I knew how they thought. She would be heading for the weapons division, yes, but she'd avoid the main corridors. Too exposed. She'd use maintenance tunnels, ventilation systems. A flash of movement caught my eye. Up in the ceiling rafters, a slender figure was moving with remarkable agility, leaping from one support beam to another. There, I shouted, raising my weapon. But before I could fire, one of our own hunter units, sleek, chrome-plated killing machines designed for battlefield deployment, burst through a nearby door. Its sensors immediately locked onto the movement above, and it fired a high-energy pulse. The beam missed Subject 9 by millimeters, striking a support column instead. The resulting explosion sent debris raining down, and I was forced to dive for cover. When I looked up again, both the human and the hunter were gone. Attention all personnel. I broadcasted over the emergency channel. This is Chief Xenobiologist Kezel. Subject 9 is heading for the weapons division. All available security forces converge there immediately. She is to be terminated on sight. Repeat, terminated on sight. I picked myself up and headed for the nearest emergency lift. If she reached the prototype weapons, the lift doors opened, revealing a scene of carnage. 3 security officers lay dead, their necks twisted at impossible angles. Standing over them was a hunter unit, its optical sensors swiveling toward me. "Command override," I shouted. "Kesel Prime Omega 3. The hunter paused, processing. Then, to my horror, it spoke in a perfect simulation of my own voice. "Command override accepted. New directive. Eliminate Dr. Kesel." It lunged. I barely managed to roll aside, firing my sidearm in desperation. The energy bolt glanced off the hunter's armored chassis, leaving barely a scorch mark. "How?" I gasped. "How did you reprogram it?" "I didn't." The voice came from behind me. "Human. Female." Coldly amused. I spun to face Alexandra Parker, Subject 9, standing in the doorway of the lift. She looked different now. Gone was the passive, observant specimen we'd studied. In her place stood a predator, her lips curved in what humans called a smile, but contained none of the warmth that expression supposedly conveyed. "Your hunters have a fundamental design flaw," she said conversationally, as if we were discussing the weather, rather than my imminent death. "They are programmed to adapt to battlefield conditions, learning and evolving their tactics. All I had to do was convince this one that you are the enemy." "Impossible," I spat. "The command overrides were easy to crack once I understood your language. You really should have been more careful with your vocal commands during examinations. I have been learning your speech patterns for weeks." The hunter advanced on me, its weaponized limbs reconfiguring into blades. "Call it off," I demanded. "I would," she said with mock regret, "but I'm just a primitive animal. How could I possibly understand your sophisticated technology? Please," I found myself begging, "we can negotiate. Whatever you want, what I want." For the first time, real emotion flashed across her face, raw, terrible fury. "I want my planet left alone. I want your consortium to understand that humans aren't your test subjects or your prey. We can discuss terms, no more discussion." She stepped back into the lift. "I have downloaded your entire research database. I know what you were planning for Earth. Now I'm going to ensure it never happens." "How? You are just one human." She smiled again, and it was the most terrifying expression I'd ever seen on any species. "I won't be by the time I'm finished here. You have specimens from 17 different worlds in this facility. Most of them have a similar grievance against the Consortium. We are going to have a little alliance meeting." The lift doors began to close. "Oh, and Dr. Kesel? You might want to run. I have programmed all the hunter units to consider senior research staff their primary targets. Starting with you." The doors sealed shut as the hunter lunged for me again. I survived. Barely. 3 broken limbs and a punctured secondary respiratory sac later, I managed to find refuge in a sealed laboratory on the far side of the facility. From there, I watched in horror as Subject 9, no, Alexandra Parker systematically dismantled everything we'd built. She didn't just escape, she conquered. First, she freed the sentient specimens, representatives of species the Consortium had deemed too primitive to have rights but intelligent enough to be useful research subjects. Then she armed them, using our own weapons against us. Within hours, they had secured the communications center. By the end of the day, they had broadcast our research files, including our plans for resource extraction from 17 inhabited worlds, to every corner of the galaxy. The diplomatic fallout was catastrophic. Species that had ignored the Consortium's activities, either through indifference or self-interest, could no longer pretend ignorance. Allies abandoned us overnight. Trade sanctions were imposed, military action was threatened, and at the center of it all was Alexandra Parker, human female, former Subject 9, now being called by a new title in transmissions across a dozen worlds, the Queen of Ruin, because she hadn't just exposed our operations, she had declared war. The Consortium believed it had the right to decide which species deserved to live and which should be harvested like crops, she announced in a galaxy-wide broadcast, standing proudly among representatives of the species we had imprisoned. Today, that changes. Today, we form the Alliance of Sovereign Worlds. Any species, any world, targeted by the Consortium will find protection under our banner. It was absurd, of course. A primitive human leading a coalition of equally primitive species against the most powerful research and development organization in the galaxy? They had no chance, or so I thought. As I sit here now, 3 cycles later, recording what may be my final log entry, I am forced to confront a humbling truth. We catastrophically underestimated humans, not just their intelligence or their adaptability, though those proved formidable. No, what we failed to understand was their capacity for righteous rage, their absolute refusal to accept subjugation, their willingness to fight against impossible odds, and perhaps most dangerously, their ability to inspire others to do the same. The Queen of Ruins Alliance now controls a third of what was once Consortium space. They have adapted our technology, improved upon it in ways our scientists hadn't considered. They have formed diplomatic and military bonds with species we dismissed as irrelevant, and they are coming for what remains of us. The latest intelligence suggests Alexandra Parker herself is leading the fleet that will reach this outpost within hours. My evacuation request has been denied. Resources are too limited now, too precious to waste on a failed xenobiologist whose greatest achievement became his greatest failure, so I will wait here for her arrival. Perhaps I can offer information in exchange for clemency. Perhaps I can appeal to what humans call mercy. But as I review the footage of that day, the day Subject 9 became the Queen of Ruin, I see again that cold smile, that implacable determination, and I know the truth. There will be no mercy for those who thought themselves gods among lesser beings. There will be only ruin, and its queen is coming for me. Consortium Emergency Bulletin. All research outposts. Priority Alpha. Be advised, human warships detected in Sectors 7, 12 and 9. Evacuation protocols initiated. Threat assessment. Critical. All personnel are reminded that capture by Alliance forces is strictly prohibited. Emergency termination protocols are authorized in case of imminent capture. Additional warning. Reports indicate Subject 9, Queen of Ruin, has developed methodology to extract Consortium security codes from neural patterns. Mental shielding ineffective. Information security compromised. May the ancestors guard your path. Alexandra Parker stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship Defiance, watching the stars streak by as they hurtled through hyperspace. Around her, a crew composed of 7 different species worked in perfect harmony, former research subjects united by a common enemy and a common leader. "We are approaching the Vega outpost, my queen," reported Nivex, her Thraxian navigation officer. The insectoid's mandibles clicked nervously. "Consortium defenses appear to be active." "Of course they are," Alexandra replied, her voice steady. "They always fight hardest when cornered." "Your orders?" She considered for a moment. Dr. Sol was confirmed to be at this outpost, the xenobiologist who had overseen her captivity, who had planned the exploitation of Earth, who had dismissed humans as clever animals at best. Standard approach, she decided. Offer them one chance to surrender. If they refuse, she let the sentence hang unfinished. "And if we capture Dr. Kadzel?" asked Mara, her human second in command, one of 12 other humans they'd rescued from Consortium facilities over the past 3 years. Alexandra's expression hardened. "Bring him to me, alive." "May I ask why?" "After what he did, because I want him to see what we have built," Alexandra interrupted. "I want him to understand that everything the Consortium believed about us, about all the species they deemed inferior, was wrong. I want him to comprehend, fully and completely, just how catastrophically he misjudged us before he faces justice." Mara nodded, satisfied. "It will be done." Alexandra turned back to the viewport, watching the swirl of hyperspace with eyes that had seen too much and a heart that had transformed suffering into strength. 3 years ago, she had been a geologist on a routine expedition in the Arizona desert. Then came the blinding light, the sensation of being studied like an insect under glass, the horrifying realization that Earth was nothing but a resource to be harvested in the eyes of these advanced aliens. Now she commanded the most diverse fighting force the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been enemies for millennia fought side by side under her banner. Worlds that had never known each other's existence now shared technology, culture, and a common cause, all because the Consortium had made one critical mistake. They had taken Alexandra Parker, thinking her just another specimen, just another Subject 9 in an endless series of experiments. They should have left her on Earth. "Hyperspace exit in 30 seconds, announced Nivex. Alexandra straightened her shoulders. Battle stations. All hands prepare for combat. As the crew rushed to their positions, she allowed herself a small, cold smile, the kind that had once terrified Dr. Keras. Time to finish what we started, she whispered to herself as the stars reappeared and the Consortium outpost loomed before them, its weapons already powering up for a fight it couldn't possibly win. The Queen of Ruin had come to collect her due. The Vega outpost fell in less than 6 hours. From my hiding place in the abandoned data archives, I watched through security feeds as Alliance forces methodically dismantled our defenses. Their tactics were unsettling in their efficiency. No wasted movements, no unnecessary casualties, just the cold, calculating precision that I once believed was the exclusive domain of the Consortium. How wrong I had been. Most disturbing of all was the sight of their ground forces, a mix of species that should have been at each other's throats by any reasonable evolutionary standard. Thraxians fighting alongside Varathi, Nilari technicians working with Juvani warriors, species with ancestral hatreds dating back millennia, now united under a single banner. Under her banner, Dr. Kadzel. The voice came from behind me, causing my dorsal spines to stiffen involuntarily. I hadn't heard the door open, hadn't detected any movement. Yet somehow, she was there. Subject 9, I replied, refusing to turn around, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing the fear I knew was evident in my posture. That's not my name. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. But then you never bothered to use my real one, did you? Alexandra Parker, I said, finally turning to face her. She stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the emergency lighting of the corridor. Gone was the examination gown of her captivity. Now she wore a fitted combat suit of Consortium design, likely salvaged from one of our fallen outposts, modified to accommodate human physiology. At her hip rested a pulse pistol of Thraxian make, and around her neck hung a small data crystal that pulsed with a faint blue light. But it was her eyes that captured my attention. Cold, calculating, victorious. "You have come to kill me," I stated. Not a question. She smiled that terrible smile. "If I wanted you dead, Doctor, you wouldn't have survived the initial bombardment. Then why am I still alive?" Alexandra stepped fully into the room, the door sliding shut behind her. "Because you are going to help me." I couldn't contain my bitter laugh. "Help you? After what you have done to the Consortium, to my life's work?" "Your life's work," she repeated, her voice hardening slightly. "You mean your systematic cataloguing of species to be exploited? Your meticulous planning of planetary-scale genocide?" "We advanced scientific knowledge," I countered. "We brought order to a chaotic galaxy. You brought subjugation," she corrected. "You decided which species deserved rights based on arbitrary technological benchmarks that conveniently put your kind at the top. The natural order. Save it." She cut me off with a sharp gesture. "I have heard your justifications before. During my captivity, I listened to you and your colleagues discuss my species like we were livestock. I watched you plan the destruction of my world while taking notes on my fascinating stress responses." She took another step toward me, and despite myself, I flinched. "But that's not why I'm here," she continued. "I'm here because we have discovered something that changes everything." Against my better judgment, scientific curiosity stirred within me. "What have you found?" Alexandra reached into a pocket and withdrew a small holographic projector. With a flick of her wrist, she activated it, filling the room with a 3-dimensional star chart. Specific systems pulsed with red light. "These are all the worlds targeted by the Consortium for resource extraction in the past 50 cycles," she explained. 17 inhabited worlds, 17 species. "Yes," I acknowledged. "Standard procedure. What of it?" "This," she said, manipulating the projection to overlay another data set. Now green markers appeared throughout the map, scattered seemingly at random. "These are worlds where we have detected unusual energy signatures, signatures that don't match any known technology, Consortium or otherwise." I studied the pattern, my scientific mind immediately seeking correlations. "There's no obvious connection to our target worlds." "Exactly." Alexandra nodded. "Because they are not your targets. They are something else entirely, something older." She adjusted the display again, and now lines began connecting various points, forming a complex web that stretched across the galaxy. A pattern emerged, subtle at first, then unmistakable. "It's a network," I breathed, understanding dawning, "some kind of communication grid." "Close." Alexandra's eyes gleamed with the excitement of discovery, a look I recognized from the mirror. "It's a monitoring network." And based on the energy decay rates, it's been in place for at least 50,000 years. The implications were staggering. Another civilization, one that predates even the earliest Consortium records. We believe so. And here's where it gets interesting. She highlighted a subset of the green markers. These monitoring stations increased activity dramatically in the past 3 cycles, precisely when the Alliance began pushing back against the Consortium. I felt a chill run through my body. They are watching us, watching the conflict. And that's not all. Alexandra's voice dropped lower, forcing me to lean in despite myself. We have detected energy spikes consistent with large-scale space-time distortions near the edge of charted space. Something's coming, Dr. Kazel. Something that makes both humans and the Consortium look like primitive microbes in comparison. For the first time in my long career, I felt truly small, insignificant in the face of the cosmos. Was this how the specimens in our labs had felt? Why tell me this, I asked. Why not just eliminate the remaining Consortium forces and be done with it? Alexandra's expression shifted, revealing a weariness I hadn't noticed before. The weight of leadership etched in lines around her eyes that hadn't been there when she was Subject 9. Because whatever's coming doesn't care about our petty conflicts, she said. It doesn't distinguish between human, Thraxian, or Consortium, and based on the pattern of monitoring, we believe it's been guiding our development, all of us, for a purpose we don't yet understand. You are suggesting we are all in danger, she corrected, and that continuing our war is exactly what this entity or civilization wants. We have been set against each other, Dr. Kelzel, manipulated into conflict. I sank into my chair, mind racing to process the implications. If what you are saying is true, it is. We have verified the data through multiple independent analyses. Then the Consortium needs to know. That's why you are still alive. Alexandra's gaze was steady. I need someone the remaining Consortium leadership will listen to, someone who can convince them of the threat we all face. They will never trust you, I pointed out. No, she agreed, but they might trust you, especially when you bring them this. She removed the data crystal from around her neck and held it out to me. Complete technical specifications on the monitoring network, coordinates for all known nodes, and this, she placed a second, smaller crystal beside the first, is a peace proposal from the Alliance. Immediate cessation of hostilities, shared defense protocols, and a guarantee of sovereignty for all current member worlds. I stared at the crystals, then back at her face. Why would you offer peace now? You are winning the war, because this isn't about winning anymore. For the first time, I heard genuine fear in her voice. It's about surviving what comes next. I reached for the crystals hesitantly. And if I refuse, if I use this opportunity to escape, then you doom your people. She shrugged. The Alliance is prepared either way. We have already begun fortifying our systems against potential incursion. The Consortium can join us, or it can face whatever's coming alone. You have changed, I observed. The Subject 9 I studied would have demanded vengeance, not offered alliance. A sad smile touched her lips. The universe has a way of putting personal grievances in perspective. Don't mistake this for forgiveness, Dr. Kessel. I haven't forgotten what you did to me, to my people, to the 17 worlds you targeted. But right now we have a common enemy, and humans have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. A temporary friend, I noted. Exactly. Her smile turned cold again. So don't mistake this for trust either. She stood, moving toward the door. You have 6 hours before we leave this sector. A shuttle has been prepared for you. The navigation system is programmed with coordinates for the nearest Consortium stronghold. What you do with the information I have given you is your choice. As she reached the doorway, I found myself calling after her. Alexandra. She paused, looking back over her shoulder. What if you are wrong? What if this is simply another advanced civilization making first contact? Her laugh was short and harsh. Then they have a strange way of introducing themselves, don't they? Watching from the shadows for 50,000 years, setting up elaborate monitoring networks, manipulating species into conflict. No, Dr. Kellel, this isn't first contact. This is something else entirely. With that, she was gone, leaving me alone with 2 data crystals and a decision that would determine the fate of my species. Consortium High Command received my transmission with predictable skepticism. This is clearly Alliance propaganda, declared Supreme Director Voss, his image flickering slightly over the secure channel. a transparent attempt to delay our counteroffensive while they regroup. With respect, Director, I countered, I have personally verified the data. The monitoring network exists. I have seen the energy signatures myself, and we are to trust your analysis. Voss's facial ridges darkened with disdain. You who allowed the human specimen to escape, who failed to prevent the formation of this so-called alliance in the first place. I swallowed my pride. Now was not the time for ego. I understand your reluctance. But consider the strategic implications if the data is accurate. Some force has been manipulating both the Consortium and the Alliance species, pushing us toward conflict. For what purpose? Even if true, interjected Director Maul of Scientific Operations, why should we agree to this ceasefire? The Alliance forces are stretched thin. Our latest intelligence suggests their supply lines are vulnerable. We could crush them within 3 cycles, or we could destroy ourselves fighting the wrong enemy. I replied, Director Maul, you have seen the reports from the outer systems, the space-time distortions, the disappearance of our deep space monitoring stations. Can you explain those phenomena? An instant final silence fell over the transmission. The human, Alexandra Parker, believes we are being tested. I continued, that our conflict with the Alliance is half of some larger experiment, and given the Consortium's own history with experimental subjects, I find the theory disturbingly plausible. What exactly are you suggesting, Dr. Cassell? Voss asked, his tone marginally less dismissive. I'm suggesting we accept the Alliance's proposal, temporarily, long enough to investigate this potential threat. If it proves false, we can always resume hostilities later, and put ourselves at a tactical disadvantage in the meantime. The terms of the ceasefire include a demilitarized zone between our territories. Both sides would withdraw to defensible positions. Neither would gain an advantage. The directors exchanged glances. Finally, Director Lan of Military Operations spoke up. Our forces are not as strong as we have led the general population to believe, she admitted reluctantly. The Alliance has been more resourceful than anticipated. A ceasefire would allow us to consolidate our remaining assets. This is cowardice, Voss hissed. The Consortium does not negotiate with inferior species. The Consortium adapts to survive, I countered. Isn't that our most fundamental principle? Adaptation? Evolution? If we cannot adapt to this new reality, then perhaps we deserve extinction. Harsh words, but necessary ones. I could see them having an impact, even on the stubborn Voss. We will consider your recommendation, he said finally. Transmit all data for analysis. We will reconvene in 12 hours. The transmission ended, leaving me alone in the shuttle with my thoughts and my doubts. Was I doing the right thing? Or had I been manipulated by a human who had every reason to want the Consortium destroyed? I replayed my conversation with Alexandra in my mind, searching for deception. But all I found was the same fear I now felt myself. Fear of something vast and unknowable watching us from the darkness between stars. I initiated the shuttle's sleep cycle and closed my eyes, knowing that whatever decision the High Command reached, the galaxy would never be the same. The ceasefire was announced 3 days later. For the first time in 3 cycles, Consortium and Alliance vessels maneuvered past each other without weapons locked. Communication channels, long filled with threats and battle coordinates, now carried technical data about the mysterious monitoring network, and I found myself in the most unlikely of positions, liaison between the 2 forces I had once considered irreconcilable enemies. The coordinates you provided have been confirmed, I reported to Alexandra during our weekly secure transmission. Consortium deep space probes have identified 37 additional monitoring nodes beyond Alliance territory. Her image nodded, the slight delay in transmission giving her movements a jerky quality. That matches our findings. The network is far more extensive than we initially believed. Have your scientists determined its purpose? Not conclusively, but we have detected a pattern in the energy fluctuations. They appear to be measuring something, possibly quantifying the level of conflict between our forces, as if gauging our aggression, Alexandra mused, testing our capacity for war and peace. Precisely. I hesitated before continuing. There's something else. We have detected a new type of energy signature at the edge of the Vorus sector. Something massive is arriving. Alexandra's expression tightened. How long do we have? Based on current trajectories, 2 weeks. Maybe less, she cursed in her native language. We are not ready. The The defensive platforms are only at 60% capacity. The planetary shields haven't been tested at full power. The Consortium is in a similar position, I admitted. We have redirected all available resources to strengthening our core systems, but it's not enough, she finished. Not if what's coming is what we think it is. We sat in silence for a moment, united by the same dread. We need to coordinate our efforts, Alexandra said finally. No more separate defensive strategies. If we are going to survive this, we need to work as one. The High Command will never agree to share military technology with the Alliance. They don't have a choice. None of us do. Her voice was steel. Arrange a direct meeting. All decision-makers. No proxies. No delays. I should have protested, should have insisted on proper diplomatic channels, but I had seen the data, had run the simulations myself. I will make it happen, I promised. The summit took place on a neutral space station at the edge of what had once been contested territory. Representatives from all 17 Alliance species sat across from the 7-member Consortium High Command. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a molecular blade. Alexandra Parker, once Subject 9, now the undisputed leader of the Alliance, stood at one end of the long table, Supreme Director Voss at the other, ancient enemies brought together by a common threat. Let me be clear, Alexandra began without preamble. None of us are here by choice. None of us have forgotten the past, but right now, the past is a luxury we cannot afford. She activated the central holographic display, showing the latest data on the approaching anomaly. This entity, or entities, has been watching us for millennia. It has technology beyond our comprehension, and in approximately 12 days, it will arrive at the edge of inhabited space. We have already agreed to a ceasefire, Director Voss pointed out. What more do you want from the Consortium? Everything, Alexandra replied bluntly. Your technology, your resources, your full cooperation, and in return, you will get the same from us. Voss's facial ridges flared with indignation. Absolutely not. The Consortium's technological advantage is our only. Your only what? Alexandra interrupted. Insurance policy, bargaining chip. There will be nothing to bargain with if we are all dead, Director. She leaned forward, her gaze sweeping the Consortium delegation. We have analyzed the monitoring network's architecture. It's designed to evaluate societies under stress, to measure our responses to conflict, to determine if we are worthy of something. Worthy of what? Asked Director Mal. That's the question, isn't it? Alexandra looked troubled. Preservation, destruction, assimilation. We don't know, but I suspect we are about to find out. She straightened, her voice taking on a formal tone. The Alliance proposes a full merger of our defensive capabilities, joint command structure, shared technology, unified response protocols. The room erupted in objections from both sides. Old hatreds died hard, even in the face of extinction. Enough. The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. To my shock, it was my own. All eyes turned to me as I rose from my seat. I have studied 17 different sentient species during my career with the Consortium. I have catalogued their behaviors, their adaptations, their evolutionary advantages. And do you know what I have learned? I let the question hang for a moment. That the most successful species, the ones that survive when others perish, are not the strongest or the most intelligent. They are the ones most willing to cooperate in the face of common threats. I gestured to the display showing the approaching anomaly. This is the greatest threat any of our species has ever faced, and our response to it may well determine not just our individual survival, but whether intelligence itself has a future in this galaxy. I turned to Voss. Director, 3 cycles ago, I would have agreed with you, would have insisted that Consortium superiority was the natural order of the universe. But I have seen what the Alliance has accomplished through cooperation, have witnessed 17 different evolutionary paths finding common ground. Then I faced Alexandra, and I have seen a primitive human outsmart the most advanced security systems in the galaxy, have watched her build an alliance that has fought the Consortium to a standstill. Finally, I addressed the entire room. We have been set against each other by forces we don't understand, manipulated into conflict as have of some cosmic experiment. The question now is, will we continue to play our assigned roles, or will we rewrite the parameters of the experiment? A heavy silence fell over the assembly. What exactly are you proposing, Dr. Kell? Voss asked, his tone notably less hostile. I looked to Alexandra, seeing the same realization in her eyes that I felt in my heart's. Not an alliance, I said. A union. One government, one military, one science division, one people, composed of many species. Impossible, muttered one of the consortium directors. Necessary, countered Alexandra. The only way to prove to whatever's watching that we have moved beyond the conflict they engineered for us. The only way to present a united front against a force this powerful. And who would lead this union? Voss demanded. You, Queen of Ruin? Alexandra smiled. Not the cold, predatory smile I remembered from our first confrontation, but something more complex, determined yet weary. No single species should lead, she said. A council, with representatives from all worlds, decisions made by consensus where possible, majority vote where necessary. And our existing territorial claims, asked a Thraxian representative. Respected, but with open migration policies, Alexandra proposed. Knowledge and resources shared for the common good. You are asking us to dismantle everything the consortium has built over thousands of cycles, Voss protested, though with less conviction than before. I'm asking you to build something greater, Alexandra corrected. Something that might actually survive what's coming. The debate raged for hours. Old grievances were aired, accusations made, compromises proposed and rejected and proposed again. But underneath it all ran a current of desperate necessity, of time running out. And finally, remarkably, agreement was reached. The Galactic Union was born, not out of idealism or goodwill, but out of pragmatic fear, out of the recognition that divided, we would certainly fall. As the formal documents were prepared, I found myself standing beside Alexandra at the viewport, watching distant stars. Do you think it will work? I asked quietly. The Union, or our defense against what's coming? Both, she considered for a moment. I think we have surprised each other before. The consortium never expected a primitive human to escape their facility. I never expected to be standing here, making peace with the xenobiologist who treated me like a lab rat. Her gaze remained fixed on the stars. Maybe we can surprise whatever's out there too. That's not very scientific, I noted with the ghost of a smile. No, she agreed, but sometimes hope is more useful than probability. A signal chimed, calling us back to the conference room to finalize the agreements. As we turned from the viewport, Alexandra paused. Dr. Cazell, yes, if we survive this, there will still be a reckoning for what the consortium did to my world. To all 17 worlds. I nodded slowly. I would expect nothing less. Justice must be have of our new union if it's to mean anything. Justice, she repeated. Not vengeance. There's a difference. I'm beginning to understand that, I admitted. She held my gaze for a long moment, then turned and walked away. The woman once known only as Subject 9, now the architect of our last best hope for survival. And as I followed her back to the conference room, I found myself contemplating the irony of our situation. The consortium had kidnapped Alexandra Parker to study human resilience, human adaptability, human problem-solving. We had succeeded beyond our wildest expectations, and it might just save us all. Priority transmission, Galactic Union Command Authorization, Parker Gel Alpha 1, to all Union vessels and installations. First contact protocols initiated. Unknown entity designation. Observer prime current status. Approaching Vorus sector boundary ETA, 47 hours. All defensive systems to standby alert. All diplomatic channels open. This is not a drill. Signed, Admiral Alexandra Parker, Science Director, Kedala Joint Commanders, 1st Contact Division Galactic Union Defense Force. We wait now, on the edge of known space, a fleet of ships that would have been firing upon each other mere weeks ago, now arrayed in perfect formation. Weapons powered but not targeted. A show of strength but not aggression. Beside me on the command deck of the Union flagship Convergence, Alexandra Parker stands in silent contemplation of the view screen. The Queen of Ruin transformed into something else entirely. A builder, a unifier, perhaps a savior. The massive anomaly approaches, a structure the size of a small moon, its surface covered in technology we cannot begin to comprehend. Our sensors detect energy readings that defy known physics, gravity fluctuations that bend space-time itself. All ships reporting ready, announces the Giovanni communications officer. Alexandra nods, then turns to me. Any final insights from the research team, Director? I consult my datapad, though I have memorized the information already. The monitoring network has gone completely silent. All nodes simultaneously deactivated 20 minutes ago. The test is over, she murmurs. Now comes the evaluation. What do we say to them? Asks Supreme Councillor Voss, formerly Director Voss, now one of 24 members of the Union Governing Council. Alexandra's lips curve in a slight smile. We tell them the truth, that we figured out their game, that we chose to rise above it. And if that's not what they want to hear, I can't help but ask. She shrugs, the gesture so quintessentially human. Then we fight, together, as we should have been doing all along. The anomaly slows its approach, coming to a relative stop just beyond weapons range. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, a beam of light unlike anything I have ever seen emerges from the structure, scanning our assembled fleet. When it reaches the convergence, it pauses, intensifies. They are probing our communication systems, reports the Thraxian tactical officer. Let them, Alexandra orders. Open all non-security channels. Show them we have nothing to hide. The light changes color, shifts frequency, and then, abruptly, it withdraws. Silence falls over the command deck. We wait, every species holding breath, through whatever respiratory apparatus evolution has provided them. The view screen flickers, and a message appears. Not in any language, but somehow understandable to all of us, simultaneously. You have been measured, it reads. You have been judged. Alexandra steps forward, as if the entity could see her determination. Perhaps it can. And what is your judgment? She asks, her voice steady. The response comes after a pause that feels like eternity. Unexpected, unprecedented, worthy. A collective exhalation sweeps the command deck. Worthy of what? Alexandra presses. Of continuation, of expansion, of joining. The message shifts, becomes more complex, filling the screen with information, star charts, coordinates, technology schematics beyond our current understanding. Others await, beyond the boundaries, those who passed the test, those who united. I move to stand beside Alexandra, studying the data with scientific wonder. There are other unions out there, I breathe, other species who faced the same test, and passed it, she adds, just as we did. By rejecting conflict in favor of cooperation, I conclude, by choosing to unite rather than destroy each other. The entity's final message appears before the transmission ends. The galaxy is cruel. Only together can you survive what comes. Prepare. And with that cryptic warning, the massive structure begins to move away, its purpose fulfilled, its test completed. Alexandra turns to face the command crew, representatives of 24 species that had been mortal enemies mere weeks before. Her expression is solemn but determined. Well, she says with that uniquely human ability to find humor in the face of cosmic uncertainty, it seems we have graduated to the next level. And apparently, there's an even bigger test coming. At least we will face it together, I offer. She nods. The former Subject 9, the former Queen of Ruin, now something far greater, the architect of a union that spans the stars. Together, she agrees, the way it always should have been. As the entity disappears into the depths of space, I find myself contemplating how far we have come. How a single human female, captured and catalogued as a specimen, changed the course of galactic history. How the Consortium's greatest mistake became, perhaps, the salvation of us all. Whatever comes next, whatever greater test awaits beyond the boundaries this entity mentioned, we will face it not as separate species, not as consortium and alliance, not as rulers and subjects. We will face it as equals, as the Galactic Union, as proof that even the most bitter enemies can find common ground when the stakes are high enough. And it all began with one human who refused to accept her designated role, who looked at her captors and saw not just oppressors, but potential allies. Alexandra catches my eye across the command deck and gives me a small nod of acknowledgement. Not friendship, not yet, that may take generations, but understanding, respect, the foundation upon which something extraordinary might yet be built. The Queen of Ruin has become the architect of unity, and the universe, it seems, has taken notice. Whatever comes next, we will be ready, together,